testing your likes, your money, or your jokes. She's running 22 silent questions in her head, and question number 14 is that even 90% of men fail without even knowing it exists. Every woman runs a hidden checklist in her head before she lets a man get close, and most guys never even know it exists because she never says it out loud. She just watches, waits, and decides based on tiny signals you probably don't even notice you're sending, and that checklist decides everything about whether she leans in or quietly pulls away. The first thing she's asking herself is, does this man actually listen when I talk, or is he just waiting for his turn to speak? Because the women pick up on half attention within seconds. The way your eyes drift, the way you nod without really absorbing anything. And if she catches that pattern early, she starts closing off before you even realize the conversation went sideways. So the fix here isn't complicated. It's simply giving her your full attention, putting the phone away, tracking the details she mentions, and bringing them up later, because that single habit tells her more about your character than any compliment ever could. The second question running through her mind is, does he stay steady when things get a little tense, or does he flip into defensiveness the moment I disagree with him? And this matters way more than people realize, because emotional steadiness is one of the biggest predictors of long-term compatibility. A woman is quietly stress testing you in small disagreements to see if you can handle friction without turning cold or turning aggressive. And if you can respond with calm curiosity instead of a defensive wall, you pass a test you didn't even know you were taking. So next time a small disagreement pops up, treat it as information gathering instead of a threat. Ask questions instead of defending your position immediately, and watch how much safer she starts to feel around you. Third, she's asking herself, can I be fully myself around him, or do I have to perform a version of me that's easier to digest? And this one is sneaky, because a lot of men accidentally create pressure without meaning to, reacting a little too strongly to opinions, joking in a way that feels like judgment, or suddenly steering her toward being more agreeable, and she notices this instantly, even if she can't name it in the moment. She just feels tighter around you instead of looser. So the move here is a radical acceptance in the small moments, letting her be weird, wrong, moody, or off topic without correcting it, because safety to be imperfect is what actually builds a real intimacy instead of performance intimacy. Fourth, on her list is, does his interest feel consistent, or does it spike and disappear? Because inconsistency is one of the fastest ways to kill trust before it even starts. She's not looking for constant intensity. She's looking for a steady baseline she can rely on. Someone who takes back in a similar rhythm, who shows the same warmth on a random Tuesday as he did on the exciting first date. And when that rhythm keeps breaking, she starts building emotional armor as protection. So if you want her to invest more, show up the same way even when there's no big moment happening. Consistency reads as safety, and safety is what opens the door to real closeness. First, she wants to know, does he actually respect my boundaries, or does he push a little every time I set one? And this is one of the most important filters a woman runs, because boundary pushing in small things like guilt tripping her for wanting a night alone, or teasing her out of a limit she set, is a preview of how boundaries will be treated later in bigger moments. When you respect a small no without punishing her for it, she reads that as long-term safety. So practice saying things like that makes sense, or I hear you, instead of arguing the boundary, because every time you honor it without friction, trust quietly grows in the background. If this is already heading different, smash that like button and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Sixth is, does he bring his own life to the table, or is he expecting me to be his only source of purpose? And this one surprises a lot of men, because the women are actually turned off by a partner who has no independent direction, hobbies, friendships, or goals. It can feel flattering at first to be someone's entire world, but it quickly becomes suffocating and even a little concerning. She wants to see that you have your own momentum, your own friendships, your own things that light you up, because that tells her you're choosing her from a place of fullness instead of neediness. So keep building your own life even while you're building something with her. It makes you more magnetic, not less. Seventh, she's quietly evaluating, does he communicate what he wants, or does he expect me to guess? And guessing games are exhausting for both people, but especially for her, because she ends up carrying the emotional labor of decoding vague hints, half sentences, and passive hoping. When you say plainly, I'd like to see you again this weekend, instead of dropping hints and hoping she catches on, it removes so much unnecessary anxiety from the interaction. Clarity is incredibly attractive because it shows confidence, and confidence paired with clear communication is a combination most men underestimate the power of. Eighth, on the last is, does he notice the small things or only the big ones? Because anyone can show up for an anniversary, but noticing that she seemed a little quieter after a work call, or remembering the name of her coworker she complained about last week, that's the stuff that actually builds emotional intimacy. Small noticing tells her she's being paid attention to even in ordinary moments, not just the highlight reel. So start paying attention to the tiny details in conversations and reflecting them back later. It costs you nothing, and it builds the trust faster than almost anything else you could do. Nice, she is asking, does he apologize when he's wrong, or does his ego get in the way? And this is a massive one, because the the ability to say I was right, I'm sorry, without spiraling into shame or flipping it into an argument is one of the rarest and most attractive traits a man can have. Most people either over apologize in a way that feels weak or refuse to apologize at all out of pride, but a clean, calm apology without excessive groveling signals real emotional maturity, and women pick up on that instantly as a green flag worth investing in. Hence, she wants to know, can he handle my emotions without trying to immediately fix them? Because sometimes she just wants to be heard and not solved, and a lot of men jump straight into problem solving mode the second she shares something difficult, which can unintentionally feel dismissive, like her feelings are an inconvenience to be resolved quickly. So instead of jumping to solutions, try saying, that sounds really frustrating. Tell me more, and let her fully express herself before offering any advice, because being heard first is what actually makes her feel safe enough to want your input later. Which number on this list hit you the hardest? Be honest, drop the number below. 11th is, does he talk about me the same way in private as he does in public? And this matters more than people think, because she's imagining how you describe her to your friends, your family, or even strangers. If there's a mismatch between how sweet you're to her face and how you might joke about her behind her back, she senses that inconsistency even without proof. So the way to build trust here is simple. Speak about her with the same respect whether she's in the room or not, because integrity and absence is one of the strongest trust signals that exist. 12. She's silently checking, does he stay curious about me, or does he assume her already knows everything about who I am? And curiosity is what keeps a relationship alive, because people evolve, and a partner who keeps asking questions like, what's been on your mind lately, or what's something you've been wanting to try, is signaling ongoing investment instead of assuming the relationship is a finished project. So keep asking questions even months and years in, treating her like there's always more to discover keeps that spark from fading into routine. 13 is can be set with silence without needing to fill it with anxiety or distraction, because comfortable silence is actually one of the deepest markers of emotional safety between two people. If every quiet moment feels tense or forces you to reach for your phone, it signals the discomfort with a real connection. But if you can sit together in a quiet car ride or a quiet dinner and just exist without needing constant stimulation, she reads that as deep, grounded security. So next time silence happens, resist the urge to fill it and just let it be comfortable. 14th, she's asking, does he show up for me in front of other people, or does he go quiet and let me handle things alone? Because social backup matters enormously, whether it's speaking up when a friend makes an inappropriate joke at her expense or simply including her naturally in group conversations. She is watching to see if your support is real time or only private. So practice actively including help, defending her gently when needed, and making her feel like part of your world publicly, not just privately. 15th on her menu checklist is, does he take care of his own emotional regulation, or does he expect me to manage his moods? Because a lot of women unconsciously end up in a caretaker role, constantly monitoring a partner's temperament to avoid setting them off, and that dynamic is deeply exhausting long term. So, if you notice yourself getting irritated or overwhelmed, name it yourself, saying something like, I'm a little stressed today. It's not about you. This small habit removes the guessing game and shows her she doesn't have to babysit your emotional state. Be real. Which one of these questions is she asking about you right now? 16th, she wants to know, does he follow through on what he says, or does he talk big and then disappear because broken small promises, like saying you'll call and then not calling, accumulate into a quiet erosion of trust, even if each individual moment seems minor. So audit your own follow through. If you say you'll do something, treat it as a commitment worth keeping, because consistency between words and actions is one of the fastest ways to build a deep, lasting trust with anyone, especially her. 17th, she is evaluating, does he treat service workers and strangers with kindness, or does his behavior change depending on who's watching? And this one is almost universally true across women, because how you treat a waiter, a cashier, or a stranger reveals your baseline character far more accurately than how you treat her during the honeymoon phase. So pay attention to this in your own life. A genuine kindness toward people who can't benefit you is one of the strongest predicators of long-term relational safety that exists. If you've got a question about your own situation, drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I might make the next video about you. 18th on the list is, can he be vulnerable without turning it into a performance for sympathy? Because real vulnerability, sharing a fear, a doubt, an insecurity without using it to manipulate attention or avoid accountability, is incredibly rare and incredibly magnetic. So if you're going through something hard, share it honestly without dramatizing it for effect. This kind of authentic openness invites her to be vulnerable too, and mutual vulnerability is the actual engine of deep intimacy. 19th, she's asking, does he give me space when I need it without taking it personally? Because needing alone time isn't rejection, it's regulation. And a partner who can say, take the time you need, I'm here when you're ready, instead of spiraling into insecurity celebrating communicates exactly the kind of secure attachment that makes her wanna come back closer even faster. So practice tolerating her need for space without turning it into a crisis, because that tolerance is what actually deepens closeness over time. 20 yes, she's checking, does he celebrate my wins as much as his own? Because a subtle competitiveness or lukewarm reactions to her success are red flags that quietly erode connection. While genuine excitement, actually asking follow-up questions about her promotion or her personal achievement tells her you see her as a teammate instead of a rival. So practice celebrating her wins loudly and specifically. This single habit builds an enormous amount of emotional safety and partnership over time. 21st, she wants to know, does he is interested in my inner world, or does the conversation always circle back to logistics and surface topics? Because a relationship that never goes deeper than scheduling and small talk starts to feel hollow. So initially ask questions about her values, her childhood, her dreams, things that go beneath the surface, because depth of conversation is one of the strongest predicators of whether a relationship lasts or fades into roommate energy. And the 22nd and final question she's asking, maybe the most important one of all, is, does being around them make me feel more like myself or less like myself? Because at the end of the day, every single one of these previous 21 questions all funnel into this one final gut check. If a woman leaves your presence feeling lighter, more confident, and more like her true self, she will keep coming back again and again. But if she leaves feeling smaller, anxious, or like she has to shrink herself to fit your expectations, no amount of chemistry will fix that long term. So the real work here isn't memorizing tricks or techniques. It's becoming the kind of person whose presence genuinely expands the people around them, and that single shift changes everything about how women experience being close to you.